Shabbat Shalom. Were you paying attention when you were standing listening to Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments? Good. What is commandment number 1? What's that? That's number 2. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. If you're running short on memory, we do have it on the plaque right outside that window. Right? Anochi, I am God. Commandment number 1 is the hardest commandment. The commandment number 1 is to know that God is God. That's a bit of a beast. Because most of us, when we think about God, when we're very little and people say, oh, you know, God this and God that, we develop a rather limited picture of what God actually is. But there is something very special that happens in the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, which is they can lead us, excuse me, I'm a little tangled. They can lead us to untangle our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. You just need to read the 2 tablets backwards. I'm not talking about, like, you know, a palindrome, you know, no X in Nixon or rise to vote, sir. I mean, they actually lead our thoughts differently when we read them in reverse, tablet by tablet. We'll start off with the easy one, the second tablet, the most concrete tablet, if you will. Thank you. What is the final commandment of the 10 Commandments? That's number 9. What's that? Well, I mean, she was there, so. It's my mother, it's okay. Until after services, and then I'll get it. Do not covet. The one we all forget, because next to know God, not coveting seems awfully difficult. Because after all, we want stuff. So how are we supposed to avoid those feelings? Well, you'll be pleased to know that in Judaism, we don't say you shouldn't want. It is, what do you do with that want? First of all, don't dwell on it. Second of all, coveting in Judaism, in Hebrew, is a very specific form of desire. It is a desire to have exactly that my neighbor or someone else has. Not just, wow, that's a really nice tie, I better go buy one too. It's, wow, that's a really nice tie. Oh, I think he just wanted to hand something over. It's fine, it's fine. You see, I get to build into the service my own opportunity to talk to the bat mitzvah. The rest of you don't. So he is simply doing what I do every time. In Judaism, it is actually specifically, I want what you have, and I'm going to do something a little duplicitous to get it. The classic example from the ancient world was where your neighbor had a field that you wanted. You were very keen on getting that piece of land because added to your own, you thought you were going to make a fortune. The problem is your neighbor doesn't want to sell, or at least he thinks he doesn't want to sell, until you begin putting into his ear, you know, I hear nowadays that the orchards up in Galilee are doing really well. I wish I had some spare land to sell, and then I'd buy myself some orchard up in Galilee. That's what I would do if I had something extra. And then when your neighbor says, oh, well, you know, if you want to buy my land, I could invest my money up in that orchard. Oh, really? Well, I don't have enough for an orchard, but I guess I could take that off your hands. I mean, you know, as a favor to you, if the price is right, boom. Now I've got my land. Now I have violated the 10th commandment. Not because I wanted his land, but because I was sneaky in trying to extract it from him. All right, we can see how that works, right? All right. If you avoid that, what changes are you making in your perception to the world around you? That is to say, if you begin to feel those stirrings within you, and you go, no, 10th commandment, I am not going down that path. What happens? Well, first of all, you're going to improve your relationship with your neighbor, because you're not going to be trying to trick them out of something. Second of all, you're also going to be changing your internal priorities. That just because you want it doesn't mean you set about trying to get it under any means. And that last one is in fact going to make it easier for you to then observe commandment number 9, which was false witness. False witness, again, within the context of the Torah, means specifically when someone asks for testimony that you have, don't lie. And if someone asks for testimony you don't have, don't lie. Testimony was, and still really is, the cornerstone of judicial proceedings. So imagine the same scenario where your neighbor is in court because you have brought a claim against him that, or rather someone else has brought a claim against him that he owes them money. And that guy tells you, hey, if you lie and say that you saw him sign a contract to me, I'll split the difference with you. Not a bad deal. But no, you have already trained yourself from the 10th commandment. There is no way you're going to be sucked into some sort of petty conspiracy. In fact, if you did, then you become much more likely to violate commandment number 8. Because you see, these commandments also work the wrong direction. If you give in to covetousness, then you're also going to give in to false testimony. If you give in to false testimony, well, what is stealing through lying, but one step removed from just stealing? You know, just take it. Why not? If I discipline myself not to steal by lying, then I will be strengthened not to steal things by force. If I give in, then I will be even more emboldened to take something that isn't mine by secretive means. And once I have taken things, once I have violated that bond, well, the next commandment becomes that much easier to transgress as well. For after all, what is adultery if not a form of stealing from another person, of taking what was sacred and breaking that sacred bond and violating that trust? Doing it not just because it is something monetary, but with an actual human being. On the other hand, if I know that I am not going to steal anything, then it becomes even easier not to give in to the temptations of being with another person. Which leads us, of course, to the final point, either where we have descended or where we are now perfectly at peace, avoiding murder. It becomes very easy not to murder if you have kept all of the last 4 commandments building up to this point. If you have your priorities straight by not coveting, if you are not going to be dishonest in court and try to steal through lying, if you're not stealing by force, and if you are respecting the bonds of other people's relationships, then it would never cross your mind to take someone's life. On the other hand, if you began that slippery slope, by this point, after having already stolen, committed adultery, lied in court, and done everything else under trickery, what is it to hit someone in the head with a rock and take what you want? You've already got yourself in that point. So that's the easy tablet. Let's get to the hard one. The first tablet. What is the commandment at the bottom of that list? It's right out there if you want to see. Oh, the bush is kind of blocking it. It's the one, however, that I'm sure that every parent in the room is very aware of. To honor your parents, exactly. Think of what instructional value this is. To begin your life growing, understanding to give respect to one's parents. It is not actually natural, as most teenagers will tell you. Respect is something that has to be developed. It has to be grown, not because the parents have demanded it, but because the child has learned that this is good, that it is right to show respect. And for our parents is probably the easiest object of respect, jokes of teenagers aside, because they are people that, God willing, have given so much to us that we can begin to see why they are worthy of respect. We are learning how to walk in the world of respect with our families. And once we have learned to respect them, a beginning of an awakening happens within us. That there are things beyond me, things that are not just me and what I want, things deserving of respect, deserving of proper treatment. And thus it becomes easier to understand the commandment of Shabbat, commandment number 4. The idea that one day out of the week we stop. One day out of the week we set aside our normal busy life, put aside all of the different affairs of life that we are involved in, and take a break. Why? Because we were commanded to do so. And we respect that commandment. Having learned respect at our parents, we now can respect this limitation as well. And, of course, we will not do it and only feel that sense of respect. We will do it and feel the benefit, the blessing, and the sanctity of Shabbat. We will begin to taste what it is to have holiness in life, to recognize that there is a creator, that there is a liberator, the two themes that Shabbat represents, as represented by the two different tellings of the Ten Commandments. And having that first inkling of a creator, of a liberator, having given us this time that allows us to be more than we would be without it, well, now we understand the third commandment, that when it becomes necessary to swear, that is to say, to take an oath, to say in the midst of a court proceeding, I swear that this is my property, or I swear this is the contract that was signed, or I swear that these are the circumstances, that we swear by God's name. We don't swear just because we think it'll get us ahead. We swear because we actually have a sense of awe, of reverence. Then by using God's name, we are showing the depth of our commitment to truth, to honesty, because those are God's calling cards. And with that, we can then move to commandment number 2. There is no other God. There is nothing else besides God, and God is not a statue, an idol, an image. God is beyond all of that. Having come to learn respect at our parents' knee, having come to understand the importance of the Creator and Liberator through Shabbat, having come to now have awe and reverence for the very name of God as a symbol of truth, we can only be true and say that there is nothing else, that these idols are works of human hands. They have no power, they have no majesty, they have given nothing to the world. And then, in that moment of transcendence, we come back to commandment number 1, Anochi, that there is one God. And this God is not just some stand-in for a human king. This God is not just some image of a beard and throne. That this God is beyond this world, a sense of awe that is unparalleled in our lives. We have grown by allowing ourselves to have these experiences and to reflect upon them and to see in them the building steps that the true God, the one God, is beyond any attempt at human to craft a representation of. And then we reflect, and that God cares about us. In fact, that God cares so much that he gave us these commandments so that we could find our way home. And then we feel not only awe, but also love. We can feel God's love for us and for the entire world. And with that, when we read the commandments forward, they become even more beautiful gifts. Not merely stepping stones in moral and ethical and philosophical education, but stepping stones towards creating a life of wonder and joy, a life of justice and a life of peace, a life of love. So read those commandments, understand what God wishes for us, and by those wishes, understand the God who grants them. Shabbat Shalom.